Hello everyone. What's up? How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing great. Long time, haven't been here. About a week, right? I took about 10 days off. I was not feeling it. You know how sometimes you just get into a situation where you feel like a little depression. So I was a bit depressed. Gonna be honest with you. I didn't know why. I just didn't feel like doing anything. Just stayed home, just watch TV. Not even TV. Usually I watch YouTube. Because TV is ridiculous when you watch TV. All you see is Trump this, Trump that, Trump. Joe Biden, is he listening? Is he talking? Come on, we're tired of this shit, man. Get these fucking evil old people out of our life. So the whole thing is that I was not feeling it, man. You know, depression is a MMTF. You know, I never had it before. Didn't know why. I mean, I'm cool though. I'm not depressed. But everything was okay. So you saw what I saw the last time I was here. It was before the presidential debate, or the so-called presidential debate, where finally the world saw that Joe Biden is not there. Joe Biden is not the president of the United States. I said this 6 months ago. I said about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, 8, that the real president of the United States is Antonio Blinken, the Secretary of State. The Zionist scumbag is the president of the United States. He's the one who pushed the Ukrainian war on Russia. If you can remember that Russia had given like a list of demands not to invade Ukraine. Most of those demands were that Ukraine doesn't become a NATO state. It doesn't join NATO. It doesn't join and he said, no, we're going to, and he pushed the Ukrainian into war, and now they're bleeding them to death. So you saw what we saw, and you have to wonder for 9 months that the president of the United States is watching all these children die and killed mercilessly by American bombs, free bombs, 2,000 bombs. I don't think Joe Biden really knows. Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on. Let me give you. Let's take a look at this. so we can get this out of the way. I got too many there. This is everybody saw this already, so let's not. I'm not here like, but I want to show you what we're dealing with here. That the Palestinians.
I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, golf. Down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8. But I had, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
Let's not act like children.
So I don't have the other one. Down, as you can see, I know you saw this video, so this is nothing new. But I want you to understand that's what the Palestinians have been dealing with. That's how we're almost at the brink of World War III with Russia and China, because there is no leadership at the top. There isn't any leadership. You understand? And I forgot. Happy Whites Month. This is the White People's Month, White History Month, July. I kind of said it, and I found out it was really real. It was a book. We want to wish our white brothers and sisters happy month of July. I think July is a good month for white people to celebrate, since the founding of this nation, or the declaration of the independence of this nation, was on July 4th, and it was done by 100% white people. So happy White Month to all the whites who celebrate July. We're going to celebrate with you and celebrate you with your month. You got to get a month too. If the Arabs have April like me, and the Pride, the gays have Pride, June, and the blacks have February, we got to give the white people July. I mean, come on, can we give them July, the poor whites? Anyway, so what I was saying, you saw the debate. It was embarrassing, and what it did is, I didn't used to believe right-wing media or the right-wing pundits, like on right-wing the radio or TV or YouTube channel. They were saying, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's a zombie. He's sleeping." And I'm like, "What the hell are they talking about?" The guy's sure is alive. He comes in and says the usual words and go. But what we discovered as Americans, that Joe Biden is not Joe Biden. Joe Biden is nothing but a head, the headstone of a cabal of people that are ruling by decree. A group of people, the cabinet led by Antonio. I don't know, his name is Anthony probably. Antonio Blinken, the Secretary of State, and Jack Sullivan, the other people in the cabinet. Now, the problem with Joe Biden now and the Democratic Party is that they are not strategic. They are not a party of seeing into the future like the Republicans are. Imagine the Republican, almost a minority party, is strategic in what they do. They took away the courts, they took the Supreme Court, but what they did is like Joe Biden is an old man, is in his late 70s. So in order to please the black vote, or to get the black vote, or to say thank you to the black vote that gave the nomination to Biden, they picked the weakest individual, Kamala Harris. She can't talk. She has no charisma. She's like dull. And now the problem they have, if you do, you're damned. If you don't, you're damned. They know they can't run Biden no more because he's out of his mind. I mean, we're not making fun of ageism right now. What I'm really saying is that, as you know, Biden is not mentally fit. He's old. Everybody's gonna get old. It's nothing. But he's responsible for a nation of 330 million people. So the Democratic Party, what they did is, in order for the moment, it's like the person who want to get high, like one time, they picked Kamala Harris. Now, when you hear them talk, most of the conversation, they don't mention Kamala Harris. She's the vice president. The delegates belong to her as much as they belong to Joe Biden. Now, they have a problem. If they if they bring a different candidate and get rid of Harris, they're gonna have a problem with the black vote, especially the black women. They're not gonna vote. Black women are not gonna vote. If you get rid of Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, the first African South Asian American to be Vice President, the Democrats can't go over her. They keep on saying Newsom or Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, or the guy named that fat dude from Illinois, the governor of Illinois, Pinsky, whatever his name is, or Whitmer of Michigan. You never hear the word Kamala Harris. You better pick Kamala Harris if you have a chance of getting anything, because if you don't pick Kamala Harris, you're not going to get the black women vote, and the black vote, probably a black men's vote. They don't want to come to the voting booth as it is now with this idiot. You're not going to get the vote, because first of all, it's going to look racist. I mean, let's be honest, it's going to look like racist if we pick somebody else than Kamala Harris. Second of all, women will be the black women who are the backbone of the Democratic Party, who are able to salvage Joe Biden's 2020 primary run in South Carolina and afterward. And during the presidential race, they came out, and millions upon millions of black women came out and voted for Joe Biden, plus suburban women, but I'm saying the black vote. So I don't like Pamela Harris. I don't like her personally. I mean, she's a human being. She's a good woman or whatever. But I don't think she's presidential. Because she doesn't make any sense. Every time I see her on TV or she gets up, she talks with her hands are too big. She starts giggling, and it doesn't make no sense. It's like, when you make a good dinner, but you forget the ingredients of salts and pepper and spices. So when you look at the food, it looks nice and delicious, but once you put your teeth and your mouth into it, it's dull. There's nothing there. There's no spices. There's no flavor to the food. That's what Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris has no real thing. So the Democratic Party is in trouble. Eventually, Joe Biden cannot run for president. If you run for, I'm not gonna vote for anybody. I don't vote for anybody every year. I haven't voted since 2000. The last time I voted for George W. Bush, believe it or not, in 2000, and I'm traumatized by that vote because what he did, all those unnecessary wars. The reason I don't vote is because I live in New York City, and New York City is a Democratic regional state. They're gonna vote Democratic, so my vote doesn't matter whether I vote or I don't vote. So the whole idea, what they're gonna do? Are they gonna continue to have a zombie, a person who doesn't know where he is? Because you have to understand, if the United States is almost at war with China, almost World War III with Russia, and the Israeli Zionist criminals are murdering women and babies and children, destroying homes and schools and hospitals and cemeteries. I mean, war crimes upon war crimes. They make the Nazi look like Boy Scouts these days. And Joe Biden is like, And you knew he was in trouble because the prime minister of Israel was blackmailing the U.S. administration. Every time they didn't listen to him, he would go on Twitter to demand free weapons, and they would give it to him because he knew he was running circles around Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is not there. And the worst thing is to have his wife come up there that same night. Joe, you answered all the questions. You were good, Joe. Good boy, Joe. What? What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What kind of wife are you? We remember Ronald Reagan had Nancy Reagan, but Nancy Reagan got his shit together and made sure that he was not embarrassed. He was not humiliated in front of the whole world. He should have not put him in a position where he could be tested, because Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's disease, but we didn't know that. But Nancy Reagan was protective of her husband, so we never knew. But Joe Biden has dementia. He has something. I mean, he's totally out of it. I'm sorry to say, I didn't believe it before. I say, well, I mean, they're liars, man. They always lie. Anyway, happy White Month to the white people. Congratulations on July. I declared it as a White History Month. Okay, all right. Omar from the third rail declares that July is White History Month because we got to give these white people something. They're the majority of this country. I mean, we got to give them a month because sometimes we ask people, they say, well, they have the whole month, they have the whole year. Yeah, but we got to say what, we got to give them a month. All right. Everybody's getting a month, they got to get a month too. It's only fair. If we want to be fair, we should give them 3 months because they're the majority. But we're going to give them July. Congratulations on your now. What's the matter with Candace Owens? Oh gosh, Candace Owens is going. She's taking it to the enemy. She is antagonizing. Is that the word? She don't give a F about the Zios, man. We're gonna watch a couple of videos of hers and a video of a debate. Wasn't really a debate. Then we're gonna watch a video of Bad Hasper. It's a Jewish American podcast where they are against the state of Israel and against his policies towards the Palestinians, believe it or not. Anyway, it is what it is. Let's start. Where are we going to start? Oh, Europe. Now, today what happened is there was an election in France. The election was very, very important to the French, or to the so-called liberal governments all over Europe, because they were afraid that the right wing, led by Maria Le Pen, was about to get a majority and might become the ruling party in France. What happened that shocked everybody is the liberals and the leftists in France shocked everyone by winning the majority seats in the French, I don't know what they call it, parliament, or I don't know what they call that in French. So what happened is they were not expecting that to happen, but I know why that happened. Because if you remember, like a couple of days ago on July 4th, there was an election in England, Britain, and the Labour Party got 420 seats and overthrew the right wing, not the Tories, they call them Tories, conservatives, who were in power for 14 years. They have never lost so many seats, the Tories in 200 years. So I think the French saw that and they just followed and just voted for the left. I think that's what happened. You got to think like that, because everything was heading toward the right wing, party. I'm going to surprise you. I want the right wings to win in Europe. I want them to win. I want them to win so we can see how they're going to rule and how they're going to do. If they're going to cut immigration, more power to them. Maybe they're going to help those countries and those people not leave their countries. I don't think the problem is the idea of immigration is not a social issue, or they want them because they want immigrants. The way the West is set up is an economic necessity to have immigration come into their countries, because immigrants is like the logs of wood that they put in the fire to feed the monster, to feed the fire of capitalism. You understand what's going on here? If the United States does not get a certain amount of immigrants a year, there will be a shortage of workers, and there will be an economic issue, because economies in Western societies are based on a 90-day cycle. Every 90 days or every quarter, they have to show a profit, and their stocks have to go up. So they, with that growth, they need more workers and they need more consumers. They want these immigrants to consume. You understand? They have to eat, they have to drink, they have to buy clothes, they have to go to the movies. So they have to feed that monster. That monster is called capitalism. And this is what it is. What it is. That's why immigrants is not going to stop, and you'll never be able to stop it until you tell the capitalists, the capitalists and the capitalist corporations that it's enough. You eat it enough. You don't need to eat a lot every year. You understand? But I'm telling you, I remember when Donald Trump cut down on immigrants when he had that, I think it was called 42 because of COVID. And he let Malnovi, I think his chief of staff was in Europe. Inside a closed meeting, he said, we are in dire need of immigrants. We need immigrants and we need them right away. And remember, Donald Trump got mad. You need that. This is the problem. So I want the right wing to win in Europe. Let them win. Stop scaring people with them. Oh, the right wing going to take over France. So what? The right wing going to take over Germany. So what? The right wing going to take over America. All right. I'm not against that. I mean, if the Republican Party came to power in the United States, the problem is the Republican Party has no mandate in the United States. We don't have even the candidates, Marjorie Taylor Moore, Lauren Bobbitt. We don't have any intellectual Republican leaders. What's that guy's name? Ted Cruz is a fucking douchebag. Josh Hawley, another douchebag, owned by the Zionists, by the Israeli lobby. I don't mind that as an immigrant. I am an immigrant. My children are born here. My father was an American citizen. I don't want mass immigration. I don't want illegal immigration coming through the border like crazy. No country can be a country without any borders. What I'm for is legal immigration. They have to go through the process as needed. And if not needed, we don't need them. We could close it down anytime we want to. And if the Christian Republican Party, if they were really conservative, so what? You know, a lot of us Muslims, we like conservatism. We like family values. We like people who go to church. We like to see a country that is not dependent on pornography, on children being exposed to TV shows that play with their mind and show them things they're not supposed to show them. And nobody minds that. Everybody, we want that. But the problem is you're scaring people away. Project 2025. Shut up. It doesn't have to be named Project 2025. It could be just the Republican platform. You understand? That's all it is. People think that minorities are scared of white Christian values in the United States. They're not, they want that. The most conservative people in the United States, I think, are the blacks. I live in New York. Every Sunday when I drive around, the churches are filled to the tilt. They have double parking, triple parking. They have some streets that are closed from one end to the other because so many people at churches, in these churches, in black churches, they're conservative. They want that. You understand? So, you know, I haven't talked a lot. Let's go. Let's see what our sister here, Candace Owen, is saying. This is what I wanted to show you before I came in. Let me see if this is it.
Gone surgically open.
Okay. We're gonna go video by video of our sister. What's your name, sister? Candace Owen. Okay. Let me see what she's saying. I mean, she's going full throttle on these. Is that hot? All right. Wait, let me get rid of some of the stuff here. All right, let's go with this first. I don't know what she's talking about.
For me, when I started looking into it, it was coming a learning process for me when
Okay. The reason that look I had in the thumbnail, I didn't make that up. That's how I really look. I just made it cartoonish. That's all. She wants to look like that. All right, there she goes. Now, Candace Owen has been a changed person since she left, what do you call it? The Daily Wire. She had a lot of issue with these people, and she saw herself. She was marginalized. She was attacked by the Jewish media, the Israeli media, by a rabbi, by the rabbi, by everybody. She was under attack as a human being, as a person, and it was not right. You understand? They had no right to attack her. Okay. Okay, here we go. Now I'd fix it. You had to do that. Okay. All right, let's see what she has to say for herself. You ready? Okay, wait. I just took these off Twitter. I don't want to watch the whole show. Here she goes.
Ethnically cleansed 12 million Germans. Because when you say to people, okay, what is it about Hitler? Why is he the most evil? Well, the first thing people would say is, well, an ethnic cleansing almost took place. And now I offer back, you mean like we actually did to the Germans? Here's a clip again from that documentary I keep telling you that you have to watch. It premiered on BBC, and it is entitled The Savage Peace. I'm going to give you a clip here of a Czechoslovakian civilian who watched what was done to his German-speaking neighbors immediately following the end of the war. Take a listen.
Altogether, 2,000 Sudeten Germans were murdered in just 5 days in June.
Also ich habe schon als Genozid angesehen.
Well, I certainly saw it as genocide.
Inneren Schweinehund.
They just let out their inner bastard on these defenseless people. That was clear.
So in this video, what Candace Owen is saying is that people are fascinated. I'm going to speak what you were trying to say, but she didn't say it exactly. People are fascinated by the so-called Holocaust. I mean, it is a Holocaust. I don't want to get in trouble here, of 6 million Jews. But she's saying that the Germans lost more people, not in the war, but after the war. So she wants to spotlight the losses of the German. Now, is her intentions in the right place? I don't know. I can't read into her heart. And why is she saying that at this time, at this moment of her career? Is it good and safe for her career? We'll find out. Because when they come after her, they'll come after her. Unless, I don't know. Let's see what she's got to say. Let's watch this.
It took decades to get this small memorial to the killings erected in the teeth of local Czech opposition.
I can say that what happened here in 45 is no different at all to the Third Reich. The morals of these people who did this, they were the same.
They were the same. You're probably thinking, but Candace, literally Hitler had the camps. That's what made it different. It was the camps. Imagine camps being used to kill people. Oh, you mean the exact same camps that we then transferred the Germans into so that we could, mass kill them? Yeah, I bet you've never heard the name Solomon Morel before, and you should know about him because Solomon Morel is an interesting character. He had some Soviet training, and then one day he just stood up on top of a table and said to these innocent German-speaking civilians, I'm going to torture you because I don't know where my parents are, and they were put into camps. And then he began to torture these individuals who were completely guilty of nothing. They were innocent. Here's another clip from that documentary. Take a listen.
The pyramid method was when 4 were thrown next to each other, and 4 then diagonally on top of them, and then another 4, until they were quite high. And then not always, but every so often the militia climbed on top, and they danced on the prisoners. No one came away from this unharmed, and people died.
I wanted to force my mother to commit suicide. Men took their lives by hanging, and women by walking into the electric fence.
All under the direction of Solomon Morel. He was a particularly sadistic individual. Now you might be thinking, oh, sure, something must have happened to him. He must have faced some consequences, and you'd be right. He did. In 1996, and this is according to his Wikipedia page, Solomon Morel was formally indicted of genocide by the Polish Public Prosecutor's Office. The indictment was later amended to include war crimes, crimes against humanity, and communist crimes because he was a commie. The latter charge was added in 2004 and constitutes a specific crime under Polish criminal law. So in 1998, Poland requested that he be extradited for the trial, but Israel refused. Yeah, that's where he was hiding out in Israel.
Wow.
And so Israel sent a reply to the Polish Justice Ministry from the Israeli government that said that they would not extradite him because the statute of limitations had expired on war crimes. So you can put, Germans into a pyramid, innocent civilians. You can watch them suffer. You can murder them.
So what that is, Israel has been kidnapping ex-Nazis and put them on trial 40, 50, 60 years later. But that statute has not expired. But the Polish guy, who's a Jewish Polish guy, who killed many of these Germans, that's what the Candace is saying, was able to live his life in Israel in peace. And he was indicted for mass murder and war crimes against German citizens. This is after the war. Because after World War II, when Germany was defeated, a lot of minority Germans who lived in the Sudeland, who lived in the Poland, they had these minorities all over the place. They were actually murdered and killed by avenging people who wanted to avenge what happened to them by the Nazis. It is what it is, my friends.
In mass, and I don't know, I guess statute of limitations can expire. That's all I'm going to say on that, because Israel is, of course, our greatest ally, the most moral everything in the world. Do you know who else agreed with those Czechoslovakian civilians that the things that were done to the Germans were utterly horrific? General George Patton Jr., you're probably familiar with his name because he was a very decorated U.S. general in World War II who led the Third Army, both in France and in Germany. Well, post-war, they appointed him as the military governor in Bavaria, and he led denazification efforts, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to denazify the territory. That's a great effort. But then they say that as he was leading this, he became, quote unquote, increasingly erratic. PBS states that in April of 1945, he was removed by Eisenhower from his leadership of the Third Army for making inflammatory remarks concerning the denazification policies. What were those policies? He said, quote, "We may have been fighting the wrong enemy all along, but while we're here, we should go after the bastards now because we're going to have to fight them eventually." He's referring to the Soviets that trained that person that I just showed you, who were utterly sadistic and mass murdering Germans for no reason other than the fact that they were speaking German. They hadn't even voted for Adolf Hitler, had nothing to do with anything, but they had to die. So yeah, if that's what your concern is, if you're worried about camps, we did that. If you're worried about ethnic cleansing, we did that. Don't even get me started on the camps that we forced our own American citizens into following Pearl Harbor. Yep, that's a thing as well. Of course, you remember that. Japanese, some people weren't even Japanese. They were just Japanese looking. And we went ahead and we put them in camps after Pearl Harbor, and we made them stay there until the end of war. So don't let that be something that you think we're not capable of. But then you move on to the experimentation. Yes, of course, that's been embedded into our minds. The Nazis experimented on innocent people. Candace, come on, that's the difference. They experimented on twins. I mean, some of the stories, by the way, sound completely absurd. I'm like, the idea that they just cut a human up and then sewed them back together. Why would you do that? Literally, even if you're the most evil person in the world, that's a tremendous...
This is the issue I have with Candace. You just been fired. You had an issue under... they use anti-Semitism to... Not anti-Semitism, because you were critical of the war crime that Israel was committing. But why would you come back and talk about Hitler almost 3-4 episodes? That's what I'm trying to wonder. I mean, it's not recent. It's not a recent events that you usually do as a show. But anyway, let's listen. Let's entertain her. Candace Owens is a different person now. I wish she would make peace with her black community first. She have apologized to the Muslims. Thank you. Apologies accepted. But we want you to make peace with the African American, the black, whatever you want to call the black people. Your community. Make peace with your community. Then you could be strong. Because Candace, I'm gonna tell you right now. I don't know if you're gonna listen to this or not. You need a tribe. Your tribe is the black community. No one is going to come for you in your need. They came for OJ and protected him, and he was a piece of shit. So you need that, and you need to make peace with your community.
And it's waste of time and supplies. Just slice a person in half and sew them together. That just sounds like bizarre propaganda, but let's just go with it. Let's say that that's actually true. Okay, that experimentation is the thing that sets the Nazis apart.
Yeah,
well, why did we bring them all over here thereafter? What was Operation Paperclip? We took all of those top Nazi scientists and we brought them to America. I wonder why we did that. Maybe for a little more experimentation. Have you heard of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb? Have you ever heard of the CIA? If you think experimentation is unique to the Nazis, you need to wake up. Oh, but Candace, the Nazis murdered people with special needs. You heard of Planned Parenthood? They literally tell you to abort your children if they have special needs. You learn that in the school system. And in terms of experimentation, I invite you again as required readings. This book, Chaos, man. They're talking about this specific operation that took place under the directive of LBJ, who was also a monster, a monstrous president that we had. And this operation was called Phoenix. And I'm just going to read you just a couple of sentences here. Their attempts were sometimes even more unhinged. In 1968, CIA scientists at the Bien Hoa prison outside Saigon surgically opened the skulls of 3 prisoners, implanted electrodes on their brains, gave them daggers, and left them alone in a room. They wanted to shock the prisoners into killing one another. But when the efforts failed, the prisoners were shot and their bodies were burned. That's an operation where we just were mass killing civilians, which we do a lot. But there, of course, if we do it, it's different. It's different because we're not literally Hitler. We drop bombs on entire populations. We firebomb Christians. We drop a nuke on praying Catholics. And if you know about it, you get screamed at by the propagandists in the West. Knowing about it is the crime. The crime is not actually dropping a bomb on praying civilians in Nagasaki. That's not the crime. The crime is not firebombing people through Ash Wednesday in Dresden who were civilians, children. No, that's not the crime. The crime is you knowing. It's me knowing. That's the real problem. And I got to stop knowing these things. I got to stop knowing about Pol Pot. I got to stop knowing about the Cambodian genocide and knowing that, of course, there were people that did worse things throughout history. Especially as a Christian, I have got to stop talking about Henryk Yagoda. They get real upset when you talk about the Bolsheviks. You want to know why? Because the Bolsheviks were never brought to heel. The Bolsheviks never had to face trials. There were no Nuremberg trials for the Bolsheviks. In fact, many of them came to America, and many of them are in positions of power right now. And that's why they get real angry when you start looking into history, when you start recognizing that they are intentionally telling Christians to shut up about the Christians that have been killed all across the world. They get very uncomfortable when you know stuff that they did not put into your book when you were in middle school to traumatize you into compliance of believing that the only bad people ever, there's only 2 of them, by the way, Putin and Adolf Hitler. So to those people, I'm just going to say, spare me, because I'm not going to stop talking about real history. I'm going to educate people that follow me about real history, because it's the only way that we're going to prevent these psychopaths from doing more psychopathic things in the future. If you're looking for people that behave like literally Hitler, it ain't me, buddy. You got to start examining your own government. That's all I'm going to say on that topic.
All right, there you have it. We got more videos on our sister here, Candace Owens, and she's talking about a lot of stuff. This is the next video she has. Let's see.
Was an Englishman. He was also a drug abuser. He was a bisexual who is credited with heavily influencing the eventual counterculture revolution of the 60s in America. Free love, free love. Yeah, that book, Chaos. Things got weird and satanic in the 60s in America. And America is where this Englishman, Aleister Crowley, eventually moved. But what he is most famous for is black magic. He was an occultist who pledged his allegiance to demons. He believed that he could summon demons, okay? The story goes that when he was 13 years old, he read the book of Revelation in the Bible, and he became inspired, not by Jesus Christ, but by the 7-headed beast that is ridden by the whore of Babylon. So in case you are somebody that's not familiar with the Bible and Revelations, they talk about this seven-headed beast that rules over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. Okay? So it's satanic. It's a satanic beast. When Alistair got older, he started a religious cult, a satanic cult known as the Lima. Crowley believed that the number of the beast, 666, was significant. He believed that humanity was entering in a new eon and that his religious motto, which was do what thou wilt.
Hold on. Let me see. Is this another one? I think I got the wrong.
Pagan faith.
Hold on.
Guys, imagine being married to me. I mean, my poor husband, he rolls over. He's like, what are you reading? And I feel like a regular wife says something, I don't know, maybe a love series, Nora Roberts, sweeping her away. Me, on the other hand, he rolled over, he asked me, and I said, oh, I'm reading a flat earth theory. And it dawned into an entire conversation. He's like, why are you reading a flat earth theory? And I'm like, because somebody messaged me on Manect about it and they included some links and I'm just reading them. I don't know. I'm just an interested person. No matter what, if there's a bunch of people that believe something, I now want to know what it is that they believe. And of course, he pushed me on this and he was talking about the earth curvature and science. And I said to him, listen, I'm not a flat earther. I'm not a round earther. Actually, what I am somebody who has left the cult of science. I have left the mega church of science because what I have now realized is that
this is a little weird. I'm not a flat earther. I'm not I'm not a globe, whatever. I mean, come on, Candace. Candace has changed a lot. I don't know where she's heading with this new Candace Owens show. I didn't have the right clips here, but I'm going to show you a little debate she has. But you cannot say that science is a pagan holiday while you're using science. You're on a camera, you have a microphone, you're hearing, we're seeing you talk. That's science. So you cannot leave, you cannot be just picky about what science to leave.
science, what it is actually, if you think about it, is a pagan faith.
All right, good for you. I think you're fucking weird right there. I'm sorry. All right, here's a little debate she has. Who's this? Hello, how are you, my friend? Who's this? Maria Ramos. Ramosa, ¿cómo está, señora? ¿Cómo está? Bien, gracias. ¿Cómo estás? All right, let's watch this little debate she has.
A literal.
Okay, once in a while, if you remember, she had that debate with Rabbi Barkley, and she decimated him. You got to give her credit. And she made him look stupid because he came on there. Everything she says, oh, this is anti-Semitism. But I fought it outside the synagogue. Oh, that's anti-Semitism. But I sneezed. So they bring this idiot here. He has a smoked channel. So they bring to challenge on anti-Semitism. Now, you have to understand what Candace Owen is doing is that she said not everything is anti-Semitism. I could say whatever I want. I could challenge Jewish issues. I could challenge Jewish scientists, Jewish politicians, Jewish policy, Jewish behavior. I could challenge that like I could challenge any Christian or Muslim or my own black people. That's what she's saying. That's why they cannot get it to her. And she's the first one to say that because she has nothing to lose. She has her own platform. She is not beholden to anyone. She's no longer beholden to Shapiro, right? Ben Shapiro and the other guys. Okay, let's watch this, and I'm gonna comment on as we watch it. This idiot here think he's gonna defeat Candace. You can't defeat her. She's very smart.
An award and say you are so brave for tackling BLM and talking about all of the ills of Black Lives Matter and talking about how we're using this one issue and they're destroying communities and they're doing all of that. And then when I say, oh, wow, look at this issue going on post October 7th, you suddenly go, no, you're an anti-Semite of the week and you deserve to have your entire life destroyed. I don't accept Jewish supremacy, and that's what it sounds like to me when you have individuals who didn't care when I said the exact same thing, who still don't care, as I still cover Black American issues like Sexy Red and Cardi B and talk about how their fame is completely fake and that there's some system that allows this fame to float to the top, and yet you're so sensitive if it has to do with a Jewish person. Also, white people. The people that get the most coverage on my show are white people. I'm constantly pointing to what's happening in their TikTok trends and what they're doing, and they're not offended. So it actually, to me, is like snowflake culture that's gone writ large in the Jewish community, and they're just calling everything anti-Semitism, like Black Americans called everything racism in 2020. And I'm consistent. I find it boring, and I'm not going to be like persuaded against to talking about these topics because there's a Jewish sensitivity. So this is a great conversation. I mean, Ami and I are just talking purely. You know what I appreciate? A brand that is not afraid to stand by me as I do that. A brand that allows me a platform to speak.
Externally in what you've been engaged in, to me, is not us trying, but there are people who do support. See rises in anti-Semitic incidences. Have there been mistakes in the past? Saying things like, what's really going on here? This is label you and find the problem on internal.
Hold on, until I get the right there.
I mean, the last conversation we had was called "Am I Anti-Semitic?" And since then, I mean, you're definitely anti a few Semites, you know, like just a few.
A few Semites? Right? Which ones?
I'm just kidding. But no, what I'll say is, in all seriousness, I think where I'm identifying the problem as you're coming up and clashing with the Jewish community broadly, let's say, is that there is a difference between what's going on internally with you and what you feel in your own heart and mind. And I am not comfortable telling anybody that they are something inside internally that they claim not to be. I don't think that's appropriate. I think someone knows who they are and what they feel. So when people label you an anti-Semite, you are this, naturally, your defenses go up. Because you know inside what you are, what you feel, that you have relationships with Jews, that you've had enriching relationships with Jews and Jewish people, and have no hate in your heart when it comes to this. But the distinction I'm going to make is between what you feel internally and what goes on externally. And my concern as to what you've been doing, and I think for a lot of Jewish people, but I'll speak for myself here, is that externally, the rhetoric, the types of things you've been engaged in on Twitter, the types of language you're using, this kind of conspiratorial, suggestive nature of talking about issues, and we can get into the specifics of that, saying things like, what's really going on here? This is what they want. There's Jewish gangs going on, and taking the actions of particular Jews that you've had.
Yeah, there is Jewish gang. You have AIPAC spending $100 million to get rid of politicians who don't agree with Israel. During the protests in the university, they had a WhatsApp group made of 100 Jewish Zionists, such as Starbucks, such as big CEOs, who the whole purpose was to change public opinion and demonize the students. They even Jerry Seinfeld, his wife actually paid an organization that was beating up the protesters at UCLA. So you are a fucking gang here. You're a gang. You're a gang with money and physically. Good.
Bad interactions with or nefarious Jews in history, and extrapolating off of that and generalizing off of that is emboldening anti-Semitism broadly and adding to a climate that's very disconcerting for Jews and for me.
You know what's added to anti-Semitism? Maybe the murder of 15,000 children and the killing of 10,000 women and the murder of another 15,000 men. Almost 40,000 people have been murdered in cold blood in Gaza. Yeah, that might be added to anti-Semitism. Maybe people will have a position on Israel or even some hatred against the Jews or the Israelis. So the issue here is, you see, the problem here is not Candace Owen. The problem is you, Netanyahu, and all those Zionists in Israel who are stealing people's homes and lands, or selling people's land in synagogues in California, and then claim, oh, we're under attack, when people protested against such evil behavior. Go ahead.
Yes, and for me too, to see that. And in a world post-October 7th, when we've seen mobs of people on the street supporting it, and I know that's not you, and I know that's not David we had a discussion with, but there are people who do support it proudly, and
So the mobs he's talking about who were people against the occupation of the Gaza and against the mass murder of Palestinians. See this evil piece of shit? He's here to defend Jews from Candace Owen, and he's about to brandish a whole group of Americans and human beings as anti-Semite because they came out in protest, peaceful protest against the behavior of another country called Israel. Which you got to tell us what we got to do here. Either Israel is Jewish or not, and you're Jewish. And we need to know, because if we talk about Israel, we're anti-Semites. If we try to criticize some Jews, we're anti. Who do we criticize? Give us the names. So this guy is a piece of shit here. He's going to talk in codes, and I'm going to decipher these codes for you. His problem is not Candace Owen. Your problem is the murderous behavior that you are doing, the rape of women, the United of sticking electric rods in men's rectum inside the jail outside Gaza and raping children. You have 10,000 pedophiles running around in Israel. Look it up, people. Google it. Not making this shit up. 10,000 living human beings who are pedophiles, known pedophiles inside Israel. They are fucking going with those after those kids.
And to see rises in anti-Semitic incidences, have there been mistakes in the past where we called that anti-Semitism where it wasn't there? Yes, but when we're seeing it now, for you to engage in this kind of rhetoric repeatedly in a pattern going on here, whatever's going on internally with you, saying you're not anti-Semitic and you don't have hostility towards Jews, I believe you. But to call out what's been going on externally and what you've been engaged in, to me, is not us trying, or me trying to cancel you or control you or doing any of those things. It's engaging with you and making you aware of such things. And in our last conversation, there was a point you made that I wanted to address. We didn't get to it, but the idea of like Jews are doing well, you know, this perception that Jews are just doing well and we're
doing very good.
Now, if you take a snapshot in history right now, like I will not disagree that there's a lot of prominent Jews and we've made a lot of impact and made a lot of positive contributions and are representing a lot.
You are right now in America at the zenith of your power. There are 27 Jews inside the Senate and inside Congress, the Pentagon, the Secretary of State, the head of Homeland Security, every single level of power. They are Jewish Americans. You know, they're Americans in the first place. They are at the zenith of their power, and they still, well, you know, you kind of hate us. No, nobody hates you, man. We don't hate you.
Ways we're proud of that, and the reasons for that are because of are very clear. Like because we, in terms of culture and what we value, there are things that you've advocated for during BLM and during Blexit, 2-parent families and education and scholarship and commitment to those things. That's accomplished. That's been very positive for our community, and so I wonder why there's not more admiration for that as much as it seems like there's suspicion for that. And I'll just close by saying in this opening part that for us to engage with you on this issue and to call your attention to it is just to make you aware that even though Jews you perceive as doing well in this current moment, the history, it reveals to me a certain lack of awareness and ignorance to the history of repeated cyclical anti-Semitism.
You've been doing very well for a long time. The only issue is that once you become very, very successful, the host country turns against them. You got to be honest. They had a lot of problems in Eastern Europe. In Europe of pogroms and anti-Jewish behavior, chasing them out from one country to another. That's true. I mean, yeah, but right now there's nothing wrong. Right now they are doing the killing and the murdering and the raping and the slaughtering. They're doing it right now. Right now they are not innocent of anything right now. But before, yes, they were victims.
That Jewish people and the Jewish community has faced for decades, 100 years, millennia, throughout history in every society we've ever been in. And to not be aware of that or sensitive to that, to make you aware that you are contributing to this climate, I think is important. And it's important to engage on that. And I'm curious to hear if that's something that concerns you.
Yeah, no, it doesn't concern me at all, really, because I think it's just overblown. I mean, I don't know why anybody would be offended to say that Jews are doing well in America. They are doing well in America. I don't say that as a way to slack off and say, oh, well, I guess we should point the finger and say that we should get everything. It's just a fact. Asians are also doing well. I mean, I've said that plenty of times.
No, but what about the conspiratorial language? Like,
I wouldn't get to that. So that's the first thing is like, I'm not going to apologize for saying something that's abundantly true. And it's not, it's literally abundantly true. You could go and look at statistics that Jewish Americans are living really well. So I'm not going to pretend that they're not. To the second point about you saying that I'm engaging in conspiracy, even something as simple as saying, when you say they, when did Jewish people suddenly get the right to the word they? Like, that's even like, when did now they always means Jewish people? That's like, to me, that is such a leftist. Now we're taking this word and it implies that every time you use this English word that you've been using since you could speak English, this automatically means that you're talking about Jewish people. And you need to be extra sensitive every time you type out this word because of October 7th. I just can't subject myself to that. So if there's a specific allegation regarding a conspiracy that you think that I perpetuated, I would like to answer for it, but I would like a a specific allegation and not just like you say they sometimes, because they is a word and I have a right to use it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm talking about in specifically when you're talking about a Jewish person that you feel that you've clashed with, and then jump from that to say, what's really going on here, and not focusing on the actions of individual people, but to say, I'm just going to say it like there's Jewish gangs out there, or I'm just going to say it like this pattern of focusing on, not a lot of people know.
I'm going to add something to this, man. I don't want to sound like in Hollywood right now, there's a lot of people who lost their jobs because as soon as they condemned Israel for the massacre and the genocide, they were dropped by the agencies, by the publicists, by agencies, by companies, and they're not going to get jobs in Hollywood. This is called gangster behavior. This is part of the gang they have there.
That in Nazi Germany, when they were burning books, the first book they burned was a Jewish pedophile. Was that not something you talked about on the show?
That was.
So I'm just saying, in an isolated context of if we're having an academic discussion about certain things in history, I can understand wanting to be able to cover everything. But, I'll give an example. Like, remember the incident you had with Ted Lieu where he deliberately took you out of context to make you look guilty of saying something you didn't say? And I thought that was despicable. Like, it was so obvious that what he was doing at the time. But I think sometimes what you're doing, perhaps inadvertently, is in resenting being taken out of context to make yourself look guilty, you take yourself out of context to make yourself look innocent.
Yeah,
and say,
but I don't take myself out of context. I say an entire episode of what I want to say very plainly, and then I'm taking out of context because I think that after October 7th, a lot of people have grown hysterical, and they're looking for every time you talk about a Jewish person. Case in point, obviously, rather notoriously, when Andrew Klavan, and you just referenced it, talking about Magnus Hirschfeld and his institute being burned to the ground. This Jewish pervert happens to be Jewish pervert. Out of context, meaning that you stripped that I mentioned 4 Christians in that exact same monologue. 4 Christians that I was talking about psychology.
Now, Magnus Hirschfeld, if you don't know, lived in the 1900s. He was the first person to have an organization for what we have LGBTQ, of people with sexual issues, transgender. This is the 1900s, in 1918, 1912. And his books, and he wrote books, and they were the first books to be burned by the Nazis. This is true facts. Now, Candace Owner called him a pervert because of what he was writing, and that's her position as a conservative person. She doesn't agree with that kind of behavior of that kind of people. She doesn't even recognize there are people of other gender. You understand? And that's her business. And this is what. And when she talked about this person, all of a sudden everybody jumps to defend him.
And the fact that it was created by a lot of perverts. And I talked about 4 Christians before I got to Magnus Hirschfeld. How do you just completely strip that out and pretend that this was a monologue about Jewish people? Actually, what's really happening is that you are defending Jewish people because every time you hear a Jewish name, you think that you somehow have a right to defend it. And to the second point, and I'll tell you what really bothers me about this, when you say you're talking about Jewish gangs have always existed in America. So I don't know why this is like suddenly something that we're going.
Murder Incorporated in the 1930s and 40s worked for the Italian mafia. Their whole shtick was to kill people. They were for murder for hire. It was called Murder Incorporated. It was made of Jews who took contracts from the mafia to kill other mafia members. It's a very well-known, vicious mafia group. Cool.
You can't say that there could plausibly be a Jewish gang. Yeah. You know who else has always existed? Black gangs. I talked about it regularly all throughout BLM. Talked about gangs. I talked about black gang violence the entire time today on my show. I was talking about Lil RT and how he's going to end up in prison. But for some reason, Jewish people think that they're just like in a special category where you're just not allowed to ever allege that they were in gangs, even though there's nonstop evidence in American history that Jewish gangs did exist. And they had a ton of power. You know, when you can go back to prohibition, you can go back to the Jewish gangs that, you know, were quite literally the Jewish Defense League that were putting bombs under people's cars. So to say that you can't imply.
This is true. Nobody wants to. There used to be, there's an organization called the JDL, the Jewish, JDL, yeah, the Jewish Defense League. The whole shtick was they were using terrorism. They killed a guy named Ayad, who's an American citizen, ahead of the Arab American discrimination. They were putting bombs on the cars. They were even putting false flags, bombing of Jewish institutions, of cemeteries, to create an environment that, oh, Jews are under danger. That's why we need the GDL. Everything you have to look up. There is no lies here. You have GPT chat. It's going to tell you everything. You have Google. So you have to educate yourself. Not when I say it out of hatred, but we don't want you to start walking around as this some beautiful human creatures who never did anything wrong. And if somebody says anything, that's blood libel. First time I heard that from Wick, that fucking idiot Wick TV. I didn't even know what it is. I had to look it up. And you're anti-Semite, you're anti-Semite, you're anti-Semite, you're anti-Semite, you're anti-Semite. You know the ADL is not allowed to be in Wikipedia because they lie. Even anti-Semitism, go look it up in their data. There's no anti-Semitism. There's no crime. You know, America is America. Hey, in 1 year, 111 people were assaulted because they were Jews. Maybe it wasn't because they had an issue. Maybe they had a problem. Did you know if you say Zionism is racism, that's considered a slur, and they count it as a crime? Come on, man. Come on, man.
And it wasn't even me who implied, by the way. I was actually going back historically and talking about what Michael Jackson was implying as I was reading Diddy Docs and saying that we keep hearing this allegation that's being made in Hollywood. To say that you don't have a right to even imply there's a Jewish gang is just a nonsense. If I have a right to imply there are black gangs and talk about black gangs, I certainly have a right to say that there are Jewish gangs and imply that there could be a Jewish gang.
I'm not saying you don't have a right or a legal right to say these things, but I'm just, in terms of a pattern of things and an inference of things.
Hey, what is it? What are they?
You know, one of the things that you were astute at pointing out during BLM, right, was that, what was the fundamental flaw there, okay? It's that they were assuming that because of an incident with a white police officer and somebody, on a black individual, and something took place or somebody was killed, that must mean that there is a systemic problem of white racism targeting black people in the United States, and you spoke out against that. And so the generalization, taking single incidences and assuming there's something bigger or grander going on, seems.
So let me translate what you just said. We liked you when you used to condemn black people, when you used to talk about your own people of hatred, and you used to condemn everything. But as soon as you moved on from being our filter for using you in the Daily Wire as an instrument against against black people in America, against your own community, and then when you started going toward Israel, that's no good. That's where you messed up, Candace. You have to stay. We need you as a filter for our races to condemn black behavior of black people as a whole in the United States. But once you jump to the Jews, that's where you fucked up, lady. You can't condemn the chosen people, can't you? Can't.
To me, what you're doing with the Jewish community, when you take certain instances that have happened historically or whatever, and jumping to these conclusions in the way you're engaging with it.
I didn't jump to a conclusion. That episode was me quite literally reading through the Diddy Docs and the allegations that were made in the lawsuit. And then a TikToker did an entire video talking about how these were the same allegations that were made by Michael Jackson. And he didn't do that to create a conspiracy. It was quite literally the person that was involved in the Diddy lawsuit was the person that was there when Michael Jackson died. So there was a direct tie. So again, you say I take myself out of context. You're taking me out of context. I wasn't like, here's an episode where I think that Jews are conspiring to control Hollywood. And again, like I said, if the feedback from these individuals during a time of BLM was, Candace, you can't talk about black people conspiring to commit crimes and gangs that are rising up because of BLM, because slavery existed and this isn't a racism, then I'd say, okay, fine, fair bait. But it feels exceptional to me that the same people who applauded me for this exact same rhetoric, and I'm going to give you an example here, David Horowitz of the Horowitz Freedom Center, he's a despicable human being. How dare you give me a literal award? An award and say you are so brave for tackling BLM and talking about all of the ills of Black Lives Matter and talking about how we're using this one issue and they're destroying communities and they're doing all of that. And then when I say, oh, wow, look at this issue going on post October 7th, you
see? What did I tell you? They gave her an award for talking against black people during the BLM. And whether you agree with BLM or not, whether they were crazy, there was a lot of fucking crazy shit happening. There was a lot of stealing, a lot of riots. There was a lot of people who meant well and wanted to change and police training, I think, to that nature. And those people took advantage of the situation and made money and used the BLM movement as a milk cow to milk people out of their money. But what she's saying now, she just realized it without even saying it. Look, you gave me an award when I was talking about black people and the BLM. You actually recognized me by giving me an award. But once I started talking about things that happened after October 7 in Gaza, then I became a pharaoh. I became an anti-Semite. I'm no longer that person that you saw before. So when I was attacking my own people, when I was as a black woman attacking black men and black women in the black community, you gave me an award. Sorry about that. But now that I'm calling out Jewish behavior after October 7 inside Gaza, now you have vilified me and made me look into a monster, that I'm a blood libelous anti-Semite. She just said that Candace Owens is a very, very smart girl.
suddenly go, no, you're an anti-Semite of the week and you deserve to have your entire life destroyed. I don't accept Jewish supremacy, and that's what it sounds like to me when you have individuals who didn't care when I said the exact same thing, who still don't care, as I still cover Black American issues like Sexy Red and Cardi B and talk about how their fame is completely fake and that there's some system that allows this fame to float to the top, and yet you're so sensitive if it has to do with a Jewish person. Also, white people. The people that get the most coverage on my show are white people. I'm constantly pointing to what's happening in their TikTok trends and what they're doing, and they're not offended. So it actually, to me, is like snowflake culture that's gone writ large in the Jewish community, and they're just calling everything anti-Semitism, like Black Americans called everything racism in 2020. And I'm consistent. I find it boring, and I'm not going to be like persuaded against talking about these topics because there's a Jewish sensitivity. So this is a great conversation. I mean, Ami and I are just talking purely. You know what I appreciate? A brand that is not afraid of supporting American jobs, a U.S. veteran-led company.
Is like using woke collectivist sort of, the way you're coming at it is as if the Jewish community is acting woke and snowflakey, and the way I'm coming at it from seeing what you're saying is that is like using woke collectivist sort of leftist tactics and sort of generalizing about groups and using like using the identity as paramount, as if that's relevant in any way to the coverage.
What do you say? What are you trying to say?
I didn't say it was relevant. That's what I'm saying. I never said that it was relevant that Magnus Hirschfeld was a Jew. No more than I said that the four other people that I had mentioned before I got to Magnus Hirschfeld, Sigmund Freud was also in that segment. He happens to be Jewish, but no, I also didn't say that their Judaism was the reason for this, or if you view it as a race, that because they're racially Jewish, that this was the reason for this. I never connected that dot. I simply said their names, and Jewish people got offended. They just cannot handle that there could have been a Jewish pervert that existed and had a weird sex institute. And he wasn't pervert. I'm sorry. Magnus Hirschfeld is a pervert. I find it weird and extraordinary that someone would race to defend a pervert. Like if someone was like, hey, here's a Black pedophile, I'm not like, how dare you talk about this Black pedophile? We're going to defend this Black pedophile. How dare you talk about this at all? I find that to be quite bizarre. Like you're actually not required, because you're a Jewish person and this guy happens to be Jewish, to defend him, Magnus Hirschfeld, because he has nothing to do with the Jewish faith.
Right, but if you went on to say in several pattern of episodes in which every time you said I'm just asking questions. It's a black pedophile. I don't know what's going on with black people, but something's going on here. And then when black people got offended, you'd say, why can't I? And like making it part of the narrative is what's
But you're
very
making
concerning.
that up. You don't have several episodes where I said, I'm not going to, that's just you kind of saying that right now. You gave a specific example about Magnus Hirschfeld, and I told you this was an episode where I was talking about psychology, and I had listed 4 Christians in that exact same monologue. No Christians.
Okay.
No Christians were
Well,
outraged because no
can we
Christians
talk about something very?
but no Christians are snowflakes, right? So they weren't like,
No.
why is Candace pointing out what the Christians are, that there were Christian perverts in the past? And yet the Jewish community post October 7th has gotten a little snowflakey. Everybody can see that, except even speaking to your point, by the way, and I'm sorry to cut you off here because this kind of even proves it further. When we first began that conversation with Dave Smith, and you were talking about these people online that hate Jews, you know, these anonymous accounts. And I had a Jewish friend who had messaged me and asked me, can you publicly disavow these people that are saying bad stuff about Jews? What an absurd notion. Welcome to the internet. Every time I've logged on since I've said I was anti-BLM, I'm being called a coon, I'm being called an N-word, I'm being called a house N-word. And I've never reached out to my Jewish friends and said, hey, could you do me a favor and disavow these random accounts on the internet? It's like, grow up. I'm sorry. If this is too much for you to handle on Twitter, log off. You're adults. This is how the internet works. Have you even played the stupid game the boys like to play? Have you ever read that chat on what is it called? Not Grand Theft Auto. I don't know. I think it's Grand Theft Auto or one of the ones where they.
Yes, there's atrocious things on the internet.
Suddenly
Welcome to
October 7th, like, where is everybody going to defend us from these anonymous trolls online? I'm like, goodbye. I'm sorry. I'm 35 years old. If you need your hands held because there's anonymous accounts that are saying mean stuff to you on the internet, then you got to log off. You just got to log off, and you shouldn't be in politics at all. You really shouldn't. You're too soft to be in politics.
Can I ask? I didn't bring this up in the last conversation because I think it just would have distracted from the issue that we were discussing. But a clear example of this that I'd say raises legitimate concerns. So, and I saw you talk about this with Piers Morgan too when he brought up Kanye West and those remarks. Okay, so I know you're bored of the subject, but just for the sake of clarity, what Kanye West said. I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. Nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with policies. At DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. And you admitted, I think, in videos after that, from what I've seen, and it could be stuff I haven't seen, but from what I've seen, you admitted I fumbled on that a little bit and I could have been more clear. The amount of, does it concern you, or you can see why it concerns us, that while you may have had a lot of more information going on behind the scenes that may have clouded your judgment on how to respond to that, I would simply say, first of all, you can have a personal relationship with somebody and a friendship with someone and care about them and not condemn and not condone what they say. In other words, so the inability to make that separation, like, this is clearly not anti-Semitic if you're thinking about this. I mean, it clearly was. And does it concern you? And you see how it concerns us that many millions of people, lots and lots and lots of people responded positively to that. And when we see things like Kanye speaks truth or he's on to something, and then his subsequent after that going on, Alex Jones, and speaking the way he spoke about Jews, and for that to be received the way it is, it's very, very, very unsettling for us. Can you see that?
Absolutely.
Why that would be?
I've multiple times said, like you just
who you speaking for,
that I understand how people are perceiving this 100%.
But that's not
that Candace, it seems like she's not.
He's talking like he's speaking for the whole Jewish community. You're just one person. You don't represent the Jewish community. Us. He keeps on saying us, as if he's there to represent, or he's there as an ambassador. Come on, man.
Not saying enough, or she's not being defensive enough. And I also did an episode saying I can understand how my friends like Dennis Prager and Marisha Street may have read that. But also, and this again gets into the conversation that we just had, when you're sitting with your friend and they're receiving text messages from someone that's threatening to take their children and drug them, and they snap, like, you can be also understanding to that. And obviously, I had assumed he would tell that to the public sooner than he had told them. So, yeah, did I perfectly deal with that situation with one of the most famous people in the world who I happen to be friends with, and knowing what he was going through, not just from one person who happens to be Jewish, Harley Pasternak, but also multiple people who were doing those things to him? It was an imperfect situation. It was almost an impossible situation, and I've owned that. I've said, listen, I totally get how you perceived that, and I am sorry that you felt that way. I dealt with the hand, and people said, I'll never listen to you again for it. I've taken my punishment for it, and I'm,
but to call it a perception when so clearly it was very clear what he said was so anti-Semitic.
Well,
unapologetically.
he was not talking about, when he specifically wrote that tweet, he was talking about Jewish people in his life who he felt were messing with him. And I could give you more. I could give you more names than Harley Pasternak. Okay.
I get it.
But the point is that, like, to then, so you're just saying, well, no, he meant all Jewish. He didn't. He actually didn't, which is the reason why, as I was going through the situation, I was hoping he would be more understanding. And as people rightly pointed out, he then went on Piers Morgan and clarified instantly that he didn't mean all Jewish people. And so, and I
will say,
Alex
Jones and said, I love
Hitler.
Yeah,
but Ami, that was weeks later. So you're talking, you can only hold me account to like, what you're talking about.
Not
my
you,
response.
I'm just based on what you just said.
Yeah, you're talking about my instant response to the DEFCON 3 tweet. That was the only statement that I had made, which was immediately after that there was stuff going on in his personal life that had inspired those tweets. But now to kind of hold a mirror up to you, and this is what I said to Piers Morgan, like the Jewish community reaction to that, very strong. Cancel Kanye. He's lost his entire life. His marriage fell apart. You know, he should never have a record deal, a stadium ever again. And then you're so forgiving when Bibi Netanyahu goes a literal DEFCON 3 on Palestinians.
Yeah.
People are so forgiving when Rabbi Shmuley harasses me for 2 years openly.
Candace!
Where is the response? Where is the cancel Rabbi Shmuley, get him out of here, he's awful? It's just not the same treatment. For whatever reason, Harley Pasternak's text message to Kanye, okay, he should never be welcomed in polite society ever again. That is how demonic it was. Way worse than what Kanye tweeted about going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. You're talking about going after someone's kids and drugging them. Okay, that's a real threat, not something that you're going, what does this mean? And I'm kind of panicking. That's a real threat. Nobody cared. It was a blip in the headlines. So that is the reason why people at this time then will say, okay, why does it seem that Jewish people are able to get away with more? You have a black man who did something, it was wrong, he got hit down. You know, you have a Jewish person, they are just feeling so comfortable, like Rabbi Shmuley, he's like, I can do a 2-year open harassment campaign, no one's gonna touch me. What is that? If we can't call that Jewish supremacy, what can we call it?
Okay, so first of all, the comments that Kanye made on their own, you knowing all that information is irrelevant to the fact that what he said was inflammatory and anti-Semitic.
What was the rest of his tweet? Everyone always has DEFCON 3 on some Jewish people, but what was the other half of Kanye's tweet?
On Jewish people?
Yeah.
But he went. What was the other half of Kanye's tweet? You tell me.
Yeah, exactly. The other half of his tweet, he said that had been messing with him for too long. He didn't just say, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people and tweet. It's all everyone talks about.
He didn't name individuals.
Yeah, but it was very clear that he was talking about something that was going on. You could have guessed there was more here. There was more here because he said, who have been messing with me for too long, okay?
Right, but then as you agreed, weeks later, he went on to...
Anyway, Kanye West has been punished a lot by the gangsters and the JD of the Jewish community. They took away his Adidas contract. He lost $1.6 billion in one day as a punishment for what he tweeted. That is not right. That is this is the whole idea is, I think the Jews could tolerate some fucking guy who's on bipolar who didn't take his medication. And just let the guy get, instead of destroying him economically, you created an enemy out of him. And he has a lot of money. And I don't think Kanye West he's a tragedy. He's a genius in music and things of that nature. But they have an Arabic saying that don't cry over someone who dies because they're dead. You should cry over someone who loses his mind. They're crazy. If somebody becomes crazy, that's the person you should cry and be sad about, because when a person loses his mind, it's a terrible thing. But if he died, he already died. It's your time to go. You understand? Anyway, let's go. This guy is not doing anything. He's the same thing like that Rabbi Barkley when he came to face what's her name? Candace. She put on that white suit and she came out swinging. Yeah.
Alex Jones and these things and said, I love Hitler, and just doubled down on the anti-Semitism.
That is
right?
100%.
You're not accountable for that.
Exactly,
but
because what you're asking me is, you're saying, Candace, your initial response when he said this tweet, this is what people have tried to hang me on. Like, this was an example of anti-Semitism, was that you said, hold on here, like, he's not going to go blow up Israel. Okay, he's not going to war with Jewish people. Let's just hang on and allow him to explain this. That's literally all I said, and there was like a cancel Candace campaign. That is what started Rabbi Shmuley's nonstop harassment of me. Like me saying, let's hang on and hear what else he has to say. Like that was the greatest example of anti-Semitism that people could ever pull of Candace Owens. And I'm like, well, if that's your greatest example, like you're not sounding like you're not exactly presenting very strong evidence that I'm anti-Semitic, especially because I have owned that in the moment. Again, me having too much information. Did I fumble the ball? I wish I could have said more, but that it wasn't my place to say what he was going through personally. And again, it is annoying that people always cut his tweet in half because he said more that would let people know that he didn't mean all Jews in the world, you know?
Yeah, did the rest of the tweet say that? No, I don't mean all Jews. I mean two specific Jews. Okay. What's interesting is from my perspective, just so you can understand, it's like from my perspective, Jews are one of the few people you can say, you know, there's two different things. People are watching two different screens here, Candace. It's like you're saying Jews are supremacists and you can't say anything about them. And I'm saying Jews are one of the few people you can say, and probably white people too, generally speaking, and it gets bundled into that as far as the left.
Yeah, I think you don't bundle yourself with white people. If any actor or performer says the word Jewish, they have to turn around and see who's behind them. Even you scare people to say the word Jewish. They're scared to say it as if it's a bad word. It's not a bad word. You understand?
Is concerned, you can say whatever you want about and pretty much get away with it. Do you think if Kanye dropped an album tomorrow, it would do well?
It is.
Well,
number
he dropped
one.
an album and it went to number one.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's because Black Americans think that what happened to him was wrong, you know, and so it's his own culture. I don't think Jewish Americans were the number one buyers, if that's what you're asking me. And so
well, not Jewish Americans, but he was able to get away with it.
Well,
talking badly about Jews.
What did he get away with?
Right? I mean, he took away his Adidas deal. And listen, I'm not here. I'm not here to litigate whether or not Kanye deserved it. I'm here only to defend what I actually said and how extraordinarily blown up it was, as if I had actually sent the tweet that he said. And yes, the rest of his tweet was, the funny thing is I actually can't be anti-Semitic because Black people are also Jews, are actually Jews also, pardon. You guys have toyed with me and you've tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda. That was his tweet that he wrote.
That doesn't help. I don't think that helps.
Well,
the
you guys have toyed with me. Like I would just imagine that when he said, and also the beginning of a tweet, I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, like, did you think that he was actually going to kill Jewish people when he woke up? Like, I'm going to ask you that question. Did you think that when Kanye woke up, he was going to actually kill Jewish people, or did you think that he was going to go after certain Jewish people?
Did you think Jews were going to try to kill you, the ones who were canceling you?
And I literally never said that the people who were canceling me were going to kill me. What are you talking about?
I think we don't have to name names, but in like your whole beef with Rabbi Shmuley, are you trying to kill me? What are you going to kill me?
I said, what's next? I said, you've already done this. You've already said this, like literally what's next? And that was very tongue in cheek. Like I didn't think Rabbi Shmuley was going to hunt down and come kill me. It was tongue in cheek as if like you've thrown everything at the wall here. Like what is actually next?
Can I ask you another question? Just this, like a personal question. Because you said this album went to number one, certainly not with the Jewish community, but with the Black community who sympathized with what Kanye was saying.
Yeah.
Like growing up,
and white kids in the suburbs.
Was there a lot of anti-white racism you came up against in the Black community growing up, like against white people? It's a personal question because I'm just curious.
What I came up against, like as a Black person,
just like witnessing it in the community, in your experience growing up.
In my experience
growing up, did you notice a lot of anti-white racism?
And things have since gotten worse, which is quite weird to me. And it's something that I think I've been trying to understand. And I think a lot of it has to do with politics and has to do with sensitivities that are being perpetuated really in the media. Like people are being propagandized into believing that they should see each other as other. But I feel like I always say the 90s was like the golden decade. Like everyone was like cool. We all laughed at each other, made fun of each other for our differences. Like you could throw a Jewish joke, throw a Black joke, and we laughed. And then I would say maybe since Barack Obama became president around that time, I'm not trying to pin the blame on him, things have definitely dramatically shifted and people have gotten very...
In race relations generally, race relations
generally people got along growing up.
Right. Okay, and I'm curious as far as regarding the subject of anti-Semitism generally. I think this whole notion that you keep bringing back to of Jewish supremacy, which is interesting to me. Jews don't want to be held to a different standard than everybody else in terms of criticism. We just want to be held to the same standard. I'm speaking for myself, seeing it as being held to the same standard as far as criticism. And like you said, Kanye's album went to number one. So therefore, I don't know if the social consequences of saying certain things, and listen, free speech, even hate speech can be protected speech. That makes
He's not acknowledging that he lost $1.6 billion in Adidas. The reason he's number one for his record because his fan bought the record. So you cannot cancel that. Especially he went direct to streaming. So there's no middleman or a record company say, oh, we can't do this with you, Kanye. You're a bad guy. You understand? So you can't say that. Oh, look, we didn't do that bad. Look at him. He went to number one. If we really hurt him. Yes, you did. You took a $1.6 billion from his fortune. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of beans, man.
Makes you free from legal consequences, but it doesn't make you free from any consequences when you say certain things. So to conflate the two, I think, has been a mistake in this conversation about free speech. And my larger point was that in terms of supremacy, which is such a loaded word, first of all, yeah, I don't think anybody's inherent identity or immutable characteristic makes them better than anyone else. So I agree with you about equality, that we're all equal under the law, and whoever we're born to and whatever group we belong to doesn't make us better or worse than anyone else. But culture and practice and ritual, we all make kinds of different decisions and value judgments. For example, everyone has sort of the groups they're close to, that we all, and communities we come from, and we take pride in those things. So for example, do you think your whole contention is like Jews think they're above scrutiny and better than everybody else?
Jews.
Is that I
would never make that statement because that's a very broad statement.
Okay.
But
So
like
I
I said,
that.
Rabbi Barkley is obviously a Jewish supremacist. I mean, that's like so obvious to me that he's a Jew supremacist.
All right. I don't want to speak for him, but my point to you is like, do you think Christianity or Christians who follow is better than other religions?
Yeah, that's why I'm a Christian. I think that I think.
So would that make you a Christian supremacist?
Well, your Jews view themselves. A lot of Jews view themselves as a race. So I mean, Christianity.
Jews is multiracial.
That honestly, that's the first time I've heard that, because if you ask other people that are pro-Israel, they'll say that they view Jew as a race. Like if you ask them what they're racial
as a people, yeah.
So that's a bit confusing, right? So I don't know if know if who I'm, it depends on who I'm speaking to. Right. Some people say to be a Jew is to be that you racially identify as a Jew. Other people say.
Let me break it down here for you, ladies and gentlemen. Jewish is a race. Not really, because Jews, according to the teaching of the Torah, when the temple was blown up by the Romans and they were scattered all over the world, they became part of the world. So if a Jew was born in Germany, he was a German Jew. So his faith was German, but his nationality and ethnicity is German. If you're born as a Jew in New York, in America, you're considered an American Jew. So that means your faith, like I am an American Muslim. So the whole idea to make it complicit and make it scary and anti-Semitism and all that bullshit is like, there is no such thing as a Jewish race. Even the rabbis say that. There is no ethnicity in being Jewish. Jewish is the faith of Judaism. American Jews is the ethnicity of that Jew. Arab Jews, the ethnicity is the Arab. Because Arabs were called Arab Jews before 1948, before they became Israeli, or Kurdish Jews, or Iranian Jews, or Turkish Jews, because they were part of that nation. So they had the characteristics and the same face and looks and that. Though they didn't assemble a lot, but according to rabbis, being Jewish is the address of the agency of the faith of Judaism. But Jews as a nationality is the nation they are part of. If you are in Mexico, like right now, the Mexican president is Jewish. So she's a Mexican Jew. She's not, you can't say she's Jewish. Only now they made that as a separate thing in order to create the state of Israel. You understand? Good.
We are different than white people, obviously, even though we're from Eastern Europe, we are our own race. Hence the entire reason, that many of them, whatever. It's very confusing. But to answer your point, Christianity is a doctrine, and I believe that if Christianity was spread about the world, you would see a better world. That is my belief. but it's not a race, right? So it's like there's nothing that's barring anybody else from having a Christian perspective. You can be a Christian tomorrow. Racial supremacy is a immutable characteristic, and I think if you even Googled it, I think it is now officially like Judaism is a race. It's considered like Jew is a race. It's its own, set apart from other races. They don't consider themselves white. Do you consider yourself white?
Anti-Semites don't consider. I'm from like the Nazi regime. Were the ones who really delved into this whole idea of Jews being a race by blood, and therefore there's a racial component to being Jewish. But there are Black Jews, there are white Jews, Hispanic Jews, multiracial, multi-ethnic that are all Jews. So just to dispel the notion narrowly,
and the
that
Jews is
race,
the
we
faith.
also people can convert to Judaism.
Jews is
right.
the
So that's why it's
faith.
very confusing.
And therefore you can't change your race, but you can. So Rabbi Wolpe, a man I really admire, who phrased it this way, that to be Jewish is to be part of a Jewish family, that you come from a peoplehood, from a culture. And there's nothing wrong with Jews feeling, to me, like they're mission driven to have a certain role in the world. To me, that's okay, just like you are mission driven as an individual.
See, he's offended by the word supremacy, but Jews are supremacists in Israel. Israel is an ethno state. That means it's like when Germany wanted to be for Germans. So for them here to parade around in America as liberals and a liberal open society, and everybody's the same, everybody has the same right, is only to serve to consolidate power in the United States. But when you go to Israel, they are fucking racist. Excuse me, they are racist as F. They don't view Palestinians as human beings. Forget about the Palestinian Gaza and the West Bank. I'm talking about Palestinians who have Israeli citizens do not have the same rights as their fellow citizen. Israel doesn't have a constitution for the sake of not giving rights to the Palestinians. Imagine a nation that is afraid to adopt a constitution just for the purpose of not acknowledging the Palestinian as part of the state or other human beings. So if you go to Israel, Israel is an ethno state. It is a Jewish supremacist state. But God forbid here in the United States, if a white person say, well, I'm white and I love my country and I don't want to be a minority. Oh, he's a white supremacist. Ban him from platform. Let's ban him from YouTube. Let's ban him from everywhere. Let's ban him from no more money. PayPal. He's a white racist. Because I feel sorry for white people in America. Fucking the white male. Chase him around.
And as a Christian, to feel that you have a role in the world to play. And part of the Jewish role that we believe is in terms of bringing godliness into the world. Like these are values that I would think you would also stand by and advocate for. And everybody, in other words, the fact that you think Christianity everyone should be, like, it doesn't bother me that you believe that. In a world that we can respect each other's differences and we are a tolerant society, like, you can believe that. And as long as you're not forcing me to do anything, like, I think that's great. And I can believe,
I think everyone should be, I think everybody should be a conservative.
In dignity and difference.
I believe everyone should be a conservative, a free market capitalist. Here are my reasons why. But
there are better ideas. So there's supremacists in terms of the word supremacy is what I'm really objecting to when you use that word, because it is such a loaded term in terms of I think it's just a misnomer for the situation to believe that you have a role to play, that you're proud of coming from a common culture and a common people that has contributed in a lot of ways, and even Christianity and Judaism have a shared history, and that's a beautiful thing. So
they killed Jesus.
I reject that use of that language. I don't think it's helpful, and
that's
I think
it's history right there.
I think people just shouldn't be Jew supremacists, right? So it's like saying, like, I reject the idea. Are there white supremacists? Yes. Are the majority of people white supremacists? No. Are there black supremacists? Yes. We saw that a lot during BLM, especially. They were making demands that were absolutely insane, and there was a lower value placed on white life. Does every black person a black supremacist? No, but you have to call it out when you see it, right?
But is everyone who criticizes you a Jewish supremacist?
If you don't have the courage to call it out. And unfortunately, I think any person objectively listening to the conversation between me and Rabbi Barclay would reasonably acknowledge that he is a supremacist. Now, I don't find that to be problematic because what he says does not become law. You know what I mean? It's not like he says this and suddenly it's law and his perspective prevails today. No, and because I know the majority of my Jewish friends don't think like that. So that's why I clown on him even harder, because it's like you are actually not representative of the Jewish community. You kind of lost the plot. No more than Rabbi Shmuley is representative of the Jewish community. I went after these people not because they were representative of the Jewish community, but because they were attacking me. They were. That was it. That was the only reason, and which is why I.
But I want to. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. On the Barclay conversation, there was one moment that came up that I think really needs clarification, and it was your discussion on the definition of anti-Semitism. And I know you objected to this idea that, oh, I guess it could just be anything I say. And you see a lot of bad actors on Twitter and online talking about how I guess just speaking truth is anti-Semitic, which is.
Well, Rabbi Barclay said that anti-Semitism is not one single thing or one thing that is set on a foundation of things or actions. He said it mutates. So in other words, I could just call anything anti-Semitism whenever I want. If you go to that interview, Candace Owen was not having it. You can't just make shit up as you go. You understand?
There is a catch-22, as I mentioned earlier, about when somebody says something incendiary and you call it out as anti-Semitic, all of a sudden that feeds into the notion that Jews are somehow controlling speech. But the point is, the definition of anti-Semitism doesn't change. It is always fixed as the, call it what you want, Jew hatred, hating Jews and being hostile to Jews, wishing them harm. We understand each other. Anti-Semitism means that.
Well, no, it doesn't mean that.
Anti-Semitism
does not just imply Jews, right? It's anti-Semitic to say things against Palestinians as well. Anti-Semitic to say things against Arabs.
This is semantics.
That's not semantics. They are Semites.
In the current vernacular, when we say anti-Semitism, we're talking about Jews. But for the sake of argument, Jew hatred.
Okay, yeah.
Let's call it Jew hatred. Okay? Because yes, there are Semitic peoples, and academically it's understood that there are different Semitic peoples. In today's current language, in the vernacular, when we talk about anti-Semitism, we're talking about Jews. But let's just say Jew hatred for the sake of argument, for the conversation. It's not that the definition of Jew hatred changes and evolves and is a shape-shifting definition. It's the reasons and causes of anti-Semitism change throughout time. There are so many different sources of it throughout history of hatred towards Jews, whether it's theological, in the early days of Crusades, or Islamic, having to do with hostility towards Jews. There's a theological component to it, economic and social and racial, as we see from Nazi Germany deeming Jews as this other race, this dirty race polluting our people, and we need to cleanse our society of these dirty Jews. This notion that some of the narratives you hear on the far right that Jews are somehow co-opting they're controlling our government, they're cabals, they're behind the scenes. The left-wing anti-Semitism, which is that the Jews are the capitalists and the exploiters, and whenever we see wealth and power, we presume it must be exploitative. And who's at the top of the wealth and power, and who has all that? It's the Jews.
Well, let me ask you
let's be clear. Jews are very successful. They are on the highest in the economic ladder. They are very, very well in the United States. A lot of billionaires are Jews. A lot of millionaires are Jews. A lot of companies are controlled by Jews, American Jews. Congratulations to them. So the whole idea is not far-fetched that there is some form of success. You know, you could call it whatever you want, but people see what it is. Because if you look at the biggest companies, I mean, come on, man. Let's not be silly.
Anti-Zionism against Israel. So it just comes from different places, but we end at the same place.
There is definitively people that hate Jews. There's no question about that. There's obviously
but I just wanted to clarify what that means.
And the problem, I think, is that too many people are being thrown into this camp of people who hate Jews, and it's just not real. Like I'm not afraid to offend a Jew. That's that whatever that is, whatever word you got to give that. I'm not afraid to call out Jewish people when they're behaving badly. Okay, and that is offensive to some people who think that there's some special category. It doesn't exist in my head or anywhere else. So they just get offended when I say this was a bad person who was Jewish. So let me ask you a question. What have Jewish people done bad in human history?
What have Jewish people done bad as a whole?
Yeah, because and don't say like you can't say as a whole, because we just had a whole conversation about like, you know, Palestinians. We can say blah, 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 blah. So, and I'm not saying this in a way as like we need to assign collective guilt. I'm just saying, have Jewish people ever done anything bad throughout human history?
Jewish individuals certainly have done bad things. You cannot ascribe malice to entire groups of people. That's racist.
Okay, so you would agree then that saying like the Germans is not the right thing to do, the Palestinians, this would equally be as wrong. To say the Germans, the Palestinians, any sort of that rhetoric would be completely wrong based on your
It's low, yeah, and it's low resolution. It's low
Okay.
resolution. If we're being specific and precise in our speech, you know how I feel about Jordan Peterson. Precise, being precise in our speech. We are talking about the Nazi regime of Germany. We're not talking about the Germans that brought pianos over to the United States. Not the same people.
Yeah, okay, because a lot of times you will see that they're very comfortable kind of assigning collective guilt when you go backwards and you're like, this was done to the Jews by these people and these people and these people. And I'm like, okay, but then suddenly like you'll get real specific if you're talking about a bad Jewish individual. Yes, of course. And so it doesn't.
No, but you can historically trace anti-Semitism.
It would go a very long way
towards regimes.
if Jewish people would stop defending bad Jewish individuals. It would go a very long way. That's why I say it's like beyond bonkers to me that someone would defend Magnus Hirschfeld. Like, what is the purpose of that? Like, literally, why do you feel like we have to defend this weird pervert?
We're some of the most self-critical, self-reflective people. We argue all the time. We call out people amongst ourselves. I agree with you about not having tribal allegiances and looking past morality and decency because of any sort of blind tribal allegiance. We have to avoid that. Just like I wouldn't ascribe collective guilt and group identity as paramount above all things.
If someone says oh, there could be a Jewish gang, you're not in it, so who cares? There could be a black gang on the south side of Chicago. I'm not going to be like, well, be careful. Be careful when you're talking about Suge Knight and the things that he did in the past. Be careful. I'm just like, there's definitely Jewish gangs. There's definitely black gangs. There's Hispanic gangs. And I don't need to be all sensitive about it because I'm not in them. That's it. And I think if you guys employed that perspective of not having to defend the plausibility of a bad person, then it would go a very long way. Just don't defend bad Jewish people because you're not them.
I'm going to be honest here. She's right. I mean, you cannot, when you criticize a Jewish individual, let me give you a great example. Jerry Seinfeld, he's a comedian. He's been a comedian for 25 years or 30 years. We know him from the Seinfeld show. And he's not a funny guy. He's not a funny comedian. I never laughed. Even in his show, he was the weakest character. But but right now he has a relationship with the IDF and the West Bank settlements. So when he went on some of these shows, a lot of people disturbed, like, booed or talked to him against the war in Israel. Instead of saying, well, these people are upset at me because of my action or my behavior with the IDF or toward the Palestinians or my position as he could have, instead of saying he blamed it that it is because he's a Jewish comedian. That is the most F up shit I ever heard. Like, we didn't know you were Jewish for 25 years, Seinfeld? Hi, Jerry, you think we don't know who you are? You think we were watching the show like idiots? Oh, these are 5 Jewish people in the east side of New York. It's about a show about nothing. It is disgusting how sometimes people use anti-Semitism as a way to explain their behavior or the protest of their behavior toward a certain cause or issue. Nobody booed Seinfeld or disturbed his show because he's Jewish. You saw his pictures with the IDF and his statements after October 7. The man, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He used to take his children to summer camp in the West Bank on land that is stolen according to Israeli and even international law. So he's a piece of shit. That's what it is. You cannot go, well, they hate the Jews now. They hate us. No, I don't like what you're doing. You as an individual.
It's not collective.
Right, but the context of what we're saying matters too. So I would say that obviously any Jewish individual who does a bad thing should be condemned. But if you were in a context of, if you were in the South, in the KKK South at one point and started profiling black individuals who were bad, but you continued to do it, and it's not like you're excusing their individual behavior, but you were surrounded in a way by a culture or something that used it as red meat, who do have nefarious intentions towards innocent African Americans, to simply be mindful of that is out there, and be sensitive to that your words could inadvertently be used to provide, and I'm not saying that you're doing that intentionally, and that's not what's in your heart, and that's not what your intentions are. But for us as a community that's experiencing it and seeing it, to be mindful of that is okay. I mean, not everything that can be said is necessarily relevant and should be said, just because it could be something true. Just it's okay to be mindful of the communities around that are going through certain things, and I don't think it compromises your ability to freely express yourself or speak the truth as you see it. Us to engage with you and let you know that this stuff is out there and brewing, and there is a deep-rooted cyclical history of this. Even though in a snapshot in this moment, there's certainly a lot of comfortable Jews doing okay. You know, in the last episode, I was moved by the fact that you told me about, and you've spoken about your grandfather, who was an extremely influential figure in your life, right? My parents grew up on both sides, and they didn't have grandparents, and none of their friends in their community had grandparents. They were all dead. They were all gone.
Okay,
they were all wiped out. And one of the ways that happened, if you
I do feel for that, and I think that was bad if they were killed by the Nazis. But I didn't have a grandfather either. My father's side, his father died when he was 5 years old, and his mother died when he was 10 years old. So we never saw our grandparents. It doesn't mean anything. But you know what? I think I made a mistake here. When he's trying to say that the atrocities that happened in World War II, but if 20 million Russians died, a lot of Russians don't have no grandparents. If tens of millions of people died in Poland, Czechoslovakia, and all those Eastern European nations, they all don't have no grandparents either. So you cannot put your atrocity or your suffering above everybody else. I don't see the Russian going, we lost 20 million people every day. And all these numbers they throw at you, man, it's questionable, man. To me, it is. I'm sorry I want to say that. I mean, I don't have no proof, but when I saw the lies after October 7th, I kind of suspect there's a lot of fucking lies in World War II now. I don't believe what I hear.
look at it, historically in Germany leading up to the Holocaust and trying to figure out what exactly happened was a lot of propaganda and rhetoric over time. As Jordan Peterson has said, things get bad one small step at a time. And it's true that incrementally with time, building suspicion, creating a sense that Jews are above this and this and this, there's some special class, it can feed into something really, really dangerous, really nasty, really incendiary that I know you don't intend to do. And I know you care a lot about the Jewish people in your life. So making you aware of those things is all I'm trying to do here.
And I think that's totally fair. You know, I think if there's any chip on my shoulder, obviously it's because like you just watched me take on the entire black community over George Floyd, and people were saying the same stuff. You know, don't talk about the fact that he was a drug dealer. Don't talk about the fact that he had all these arrests, because there's all this history in Black America and all of this stuff and police brutality. And I'm like, guys, the truth is the truth. So it is my personality. And I hope that people acknowledge that, okay, actually, no, for 7 years, she's been going at her own community over BLM. So this is like not as, especially because it's Jewish people that she's doing this. I just don't like bad faith actors. And sometimes those bad faith actors happen to be Jewish. And if you're reading a document and that person's Jewish, or if you're reading into history and you're talking about psychology, and by the way, a lot of, you know, those early psychologists were perverts. That's just a fact, you know, and some of them were Jewish. You know, and maybe for people that makes them uncomfortable, but it's like, guys, just call it out, because actually that dilutes the conspiracy. I think the conspiracy actually thrives when Jewish people defend a pervert. I think that's not a good thing. I think that makes them go, whoa, my God, why are they defending this weird perv? Like, is there some conspiracy? Whereas there's no conspiracy when you're like, yeah, no, that guy's a perv. He has nothing to do with Jewish people. And we're not tribal with perverts and pedophiles. Like, that goes a very long way. Like, Sigmund Freud was defending pedophiles. Like, it's like, let's not defend Sigmund Freud's actions on that just because he's, you know, racially a Galician Jew, you know?
Subjects aside, I think trust from the vehicle that information comes from is super important, and building that trust and establishing that trust matters. And that's why I think you're getting the backlash, and you are connecting it to what was happening to you during the BLM Blexit campaign, that there's someone that's trying to strip you of your blackness and your legitimacy as a person to comment on these issues, and all you're doing is kind of speaking the truth. And I can see why you're connecting those dots. In some sort of broad way, to not see that, or to see that, like the first reactions to not be sympathetic in some way was just so rattling. And it did change my perspective in that, okay, it's not the right-wing anti-Semites at first I'm really worried about. They're marginal, and the worst ideas of the right, I think you'd agree on this, are not ascendant in society. You don't see Nazi KKK shows on Disney+. We just don't see that. The worst ideas of the left, to me, have been on the ascent from the academy. They're everywhere. Corporate America, you know, children's programming, it's everywhere, the worst ideas of that, and viewing people in groups and hierarchies and group identity, politics and all that stuff. But
yeah, could you give us an example? corporate America is against Jews and TV. What the fuck? Come on, man. You literally control all media. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Stop this victimhood. This is the problem with the Jewish people. They always want to be the victim at everything. I'm the victim. No, you're not. You are traumatized by what happened to your people in World War II, but you cannot continue to use that as a way to become a victim every time. Sometimes you are the victimizers. You understand? Like in Palestine, that's my issue here is Gaza. Everything else, I don't give a damn what you do. You understand? But I don't see no kid show about the anti-Jewish. The left is racist. He wants to say that the college students are anti-Semite and that the left and the progressive came out and demonstrated and protested against the genocide. So for them, if you say that a genocide is wrong, that is done by Israeli Jews, then you're anti-Semite. If that is, then the middle finger to you. All right?
After seeing that, the anti-Semitism of the left come out, and then I'm starting to see this new sort of really like troubling thing happening on the far right. And I know like Twitter's an ugly place, but I want to just like talk to you, and because you have such a huge platform and such impact, and I know you want to be consistent, and I appreciate you always being open to the dialogue of it. That's my role here, to try to convey that how that's being perceived.
Yeah, and I
know that your
totally
intentions
get
are
that
good.
perception, by the way, because I've heard this as well.
I kind of figured out his role was to come in and soften Candace Owen from going DEFCON on the Jews, because she's been doing a lot of shows with Nazism and this and that, Jewish pervert. So they probably told this guy, listen, dog, whatever your name is, I don't know what his name, I forgot. Go visit Candace and tell her to please. Let's make peace, huh? Let's make peace, Candace. All right, you're right. Just let's make peace.
Well, and I've tried to make people understand it, especially from the UK, because they're saying this too, like the conservative right seems to be kind of changing on Jews. And I had to clarify for them, no, actually, you are seeing a sentiment that's changing against Israel. And the reason for that has got absolutely nothing to do with Jews. Let me tell you, if October 7th happened in Boca Raton, there would not have been a question of unfettered allegiance to what was going on with Jews in America. Israel is a different equation, and that conversation is starting to shift because A, we see that as a foreign country. B, people are starting to call into question a lot of things. Bibi Netanyahu has said that to me, to hear a foreign leader speak about America as if he controls it makes me uncomfortable. And then the third thing is AIPAC, ADL shoving through laws through Congress, like John Greenblatt getting caught. If you want to talk about not giving into Jewish conspiracies, John Greenblatt getting caught on the ADL on the hot mic, talking about how we got to get rid of TikTok, and then tomorrow it gets passed through Congress, isn't good. We want separation. We don't want Israel in any capacity controlling our speech. The anti-Semitism bill was absolutely horrific, and it caused a reaction. That wasn't against Jewish people. That was against a foreign country having influence on American politics. And I think because it's all happening at the same time, it can be hard to dilute that and go, okay, actually, this isn't about Jewish people. They really just don't like what Israel is doing and the impact that AIPAC and ADL is having for specific reasons. And we can disagree on that. But what we should agree on is that actually that's nothing like I'm free speech, more speech. You're going to make an enemy of me if you're caught on a hot mic like Bibi Netanyahu was saying that if you criticize Israel, we're getting laws passed in America. If you criticize Israel, it's going to be a problem in your life. That's gangster talk. Don't care what his religion is. Don't care what he thinks his race is. You got to now get out of American pockets. That's my view on Bibi Netanyahu, which I think a lot of conservative Americans feel as well. Taking a brief break here to inform you guys that according to a recent report, Planned Parenthood continues to rake in billions despite dwindling clients. 200 babies' lives, precious life.
It's like there's so many different things going on and suffering going on around the world, and innocent people and Muslims being slaughtered in Syria by Assad and all these things. And people don't storm the streets, but for some reason with Israel, people get crazy. Are you?
Hold on. I hate when they use this analogy. This is what make my dick get hard. Excuse my language. Well, there are people being killed in Sudan. A lot of people are killed in Syria. But when we do it, everybody gets mad. Are you fucking stupid? Are you fucking nuts? Should you get a break or should you get a pass for that? I mean, cookie? Well, Why don't you let us do what everybody else is doing? Stop. This is what gets me hard.
It's like there's so many different things going on and suffering going on around.
I gotta get it from the beginning.
250.
The dumb commercials. All right. Let's listen to this commercial so we can get the
precious baby's life today. Your tax-deductible gift will go directly towards saving babies' lives. You just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or go to preborn.com/Candace.
Hold
That's
on, guys.
preborn.com/Candace.
All right, got it.
Right. Do you find it interesting, or does it spark your curiosity at all as to why, when Israel is involved in a conflict or defending itself or in any sort of armed war or whatever, that it animates the world in no other way than Israel? Like, it's like there's so many different things going on and suffering going on around the world, and innocent people and Muslims being slaughtered in Syria by Assad and all these things, and people don't storm the streets, but for some reason with Israel people get crazy. Does it are you suspicious of that? And to what?
You see, I mean, did you just listen to him? Here's a man who spent a whole hour with Candace Owen telling her about how people misunderstand or make mistakes about Jews in America. He is saying that Muslims are being killed all over the world. A lot of things are happening, but don't you see it's suspicious when Israel does it, everybody gets mad? Really? Really? First of all, Israel is an occupying country. It is a parasite that happened to fall on the body of the Palestinians and is devouring that body and eating it away like cancer. This is what Israel to me is. First of all, you are occupying a land that the United Nations says it belongs to the Palestinians. It's 22%, what was 100% theirs. Second of all, you are throwing 2,000 bombs on neighborhoods. You had schools 2 days ago, they bombed the school because they thought there was Hamas inside there. Destroyed 26 hospitals. So, you know what? F you and your ancestors for that, okay? That's a New York style curse.
What's going on there? Why people get so crazy?
Because
about
the media covers it. Then this kind of gets to what I was speaking to with peers. If you go talk to the average person about what's happening to Christians in Armenia or Christians in Nigeria, nobody even knows. But when October 7th happened, it was wall-to-wall coverage in America, as if it happened on American soil, right? So that then made people, and it wasn't even that, it was then they instantly condemned a lot of Americans, and I think that upset a lot of white Americans because they were like, well, wait a second, this has been happening to us, this rhetoric has been happening to us on college campuses for years, and no one did anything, and then suddenly it became a mainstreamed issue. If it was relegated to the same coverage as Nigeria and Armenia, it wouldn't have been in the forefront of people's minds. So what we're talking about is the psychological impact of having day in and day out. I mean, literally, I used to be like an avid reader of the New York Post. I had to stop reading it after like 2 weeks. I was like, is this even an American publication anymore? Is this like full time we're covering Israel every minute of every day? So I think that the response came from the fact that
full disclosure, the New York Post is not a real newspaper. I haven't read it in 25 years, just to let you know. I don't know why you're reading such a tabloid.
It was all the media would talk about. And that.
But it's the cart
Same with
before
Ukraine.
the horse.
No one ever talks about Ukraine, and then suddenly, Russia invades Ukraine, and you couldn't go through it. Suddenly, I'm like, when have we ever spoken about Ukraine here? And now everyone's got an opinion about Ukraine. So that's just the power of the media to make something a bigger issue.
But you could see why, from the Jewish community's perspective and the pro-Israel Jewish community's perspective, why everyone gets so fixated, and the media does decide to put a spotlight and scrutinize every military operation in Israel like they do with nothing.
This is the biggest lie. First of all, no media is allowed in Gaza. 158 correspondent and press people have been murdered by Israeli drones. The media that is embedded with the Israeli army doesn't get to see nothing, only what they... This is a lie. There is no coverage. You see MSNBC. Have you seen them cover? The only one guy, A-Man, and the other guy got fired. What's his name? Hassan Mahdi got fired because he put the fire under the feet of an Israeli official. This is a lie. These people are lies, man. You see how it is? He's been crying about Candace Owens saying things about Jewish people, but he has no issue of 40,000 people dead in 6 months. This is the problem we have. This is the deftones we have. If you as a Jew, an American Jew, supports a genocidal government in Israel, then me and you, we have nothing in common no more. We don't have anything in common. We're two different individuals, two different people, and we do not see eye to eye anymore because I do not like your behavior and your support of such a genocidal maniac. And don't come with this victimhood bullshit on me, okay? I'm tired of this shit. Yeah.
Else is a call for suspicion as to this is more than just being
suspicion,
critical of,
you know.
an ally of the United States that it supports. There's something else going on here. What's different about Israel than any of these other countries? What's
our relationship with Israel is different, I would say. And I think actually the coverage was...
We fund lots of countries. I mean, we give a lot of aid to a lot of countries. Somehow, when AIPAC is advocating for legislation...
Yeah, well, AIPAC pays journalists, you know what I mean? This is part of the problem, where it's they were covering this issue feverishly. And I mean, on the New York Post, there are literal journalists who are in the IDF. You can just see it right on their thing. So there is this sort of marriage between America and Israel. And so I think what you could be reading as, well, why is it Israel? Part of it has to do with the fact because the media is insisting on us covering Israeli issues as if it's American. And so then people started paying attention to what was happening. I actually think if they didn't cover it, you wouldn't have seen any of those protests.
But most of the Western media coverage of Israel is hostile.
Oh, see, I don't. Maybe it's because of the publications I read, but I would disagree with that. But I don't read leftist publications, so I'm biased. I'm reading like the New York.
There is nothing hostile. You go to MSNBC, it's a fucking. They come on, man. CNN, all these channels, BS. What are you talking about hostile to Israel? You think Jake Tabor is hostile to Israel? He's a Zionist scum from Philadelphia. Do you think Dana Bash, whatever her name is, he's hostile? Come on. You think Morning Joe is hostile to Israel? Do you think Rachel Maddow is hostile to Israel? They don't have the guts to say anything about Israel. Everybody's scared to lose their jobs, man. Stop. I don't like this idea that Jewish is always the victim. I'm the victim. Even when you're committing a war crime, you're a victim. You want to victimize yourself? You want to be seen as the victim? You're the murderer? You are supporting the murder of 17,000 children? F you 100 times. F you 1,000,000 times. It has nothing to do with Jew. It has to do with something that you're killing human beings for their land and for their homes. Look at the West Bank, what you're doing, man. I want to debate this garbage here, man.
The New York Post. I'm reading like the Daily Mail, the Wall Street Journal, and I would not say, I would say it's above and like very pro-Israel.
That speaks to the algorithmic realities we live in and what you're seeing, and we get this read. But I would tell you, internationally, the BBC, CNN, MSNBC, most of the you would read most of media is left.
Well, you better read different. What are you doing watching CNN? That's a bigger problem. What are you doing watching CNN
but
and
most
MSNBC?
of media, we talk about it all the time, right? You talk about that. Most of mainstream media,
that's true. I just don't read it.
On the right that
so
don't
be afraid, Candace.
I can tell you this: they're hostile towards Israel.
Come on, Candace, you can do it.
It's all Israel's fault.
You was doing okay.
Point. So that's the thing, this obsession with the Jewish state. I mean, that's what Douglas Murray astutely says all the time. There's tons of suffering all over the world, but nobody cares.
Douglas Murray is a rabid anti-Islamophobe. Since he was in college, there's videos of him on YouTube. And I don't like the smile on the face of Candace. Now, all of a sudden, she's becoming a scary girl. Don't get scared. They're committing war crimes. They're criminals. That's it. It is what it is. We're not afraid. They're not like us.
It has nothing to do with the Jews. It's only when the Jews get attacked that they're attacked more. I think in that spirit of ending on an impression.
Why is that so good? That's just your
I'm not public about it, but only when Israel gets attacked that it gets...
I don't like the end of it. No, he's doing the accents of a racist called guy named Douglas Murray. I bought his book. I made a mistake. I was like, what? What? Then I stopped reading it. Stop laughing.
It's attacked more. Israel is the only country not allowed to win a war. So, yeah. He'd be good to talk to. I recommend it.
You got to get him on and do that with him. But I personally don't like Bibi Netanyahu. Fine. He's foreign. I don't really care. I get that upsets some people because they think it's like
a lot of Israelis don't either.
Yeah, they're protesting in the streets against him. So I agree with them. I think they've been up to no good, and I think unfortunately the Israeli population, as well as Jewish people in America, are bearing the brunt of bad decision
4%, 96% of Israelis think that Israel is not doing enough damage in Gaza. Only 44% say that they doing enough. So the Israeli population could suck it up 24 hours. Okay, they're all shitty, they're all criminals because they want that free land. The only reason they protested is because of the hostages, and they have internal issue with their courts. They don't give a damn. The Zionist Jew, no, how I said, the liberal Zionists and the right-wing Zionists don't have a lot of differences when it comes to Palestinians. You understand? That I did it right this way, right? All right, let's see. Now they're trying to make these other jokes.
Making by his party. But I look at that as an abstract in the same way that I look at like what Joe Biden is doing. I think he's awful too, you know, and I critique my own president. So yeah, I'm going to critique Israel. I'm going to critique AIPAC. I'm going to critique the ADL in the same way that I critique Big Pharma, the same way that I critique the CDC, the FDA, and my own politicians.
Everybody hates everybody.
People should just stop taking it so personal. Like when I start
the
advocating
world
for
is
like
flat.
Israel shouldn't be a state and that sort of a stuff, which I would never ever do, then we're in a whole different category. But I think people should just like, you know, give it some time.
Well, so it's a good distinction to make, that you know that you can recognize that the people saying Israel should be abolished, dismantled, that's where the anti-Semitism comes in. We're not just talking about criticisms of particular.
No, nobody say that. Israel should not be abolishing the Palestinians. That's where we have the problem. You know, I don't like the ending of this. Candace, he was doing so good. And I was proud of you for a minute there. And I thought, hey, there she goes. She's standing her ground. She's speaking truth to power. Now, all of a sudden, it has become Bibi. The problem is not Bibi Netanyahu or the Israel. The problem is the Israeli public itself and their appetite for property, for Palestinian homes, and they want to just cleanse them as they're not human beings. The problem, the hurt people are not the Israeli people. Stop. You know, the ultimate victim is the Jew. The Jew is always the victim. He's killing, he's the victim. He's being killed, he's the victim. He's doing this, I'm the victim, I'm the victim, I'm the victim. He's the ultimate victim. I never seen one says, well, we've been doing bad.
Particular politicians in Israel or Israeli policy, which Israel is known to do and has a whole culture of dissent and criticism. They're a robust democracy, which they should be proud of, and we should recognize as a friend of the U.S. in that sense. At least forget what the policy should be in terms of giving people money. I mean, there's a lot of friends you have that you don't just give them money in regular life as individuals. That's a separate conversation. But to recognize that, I think, is super important, and to recognize that those that hate Israel for nefarious reasons are there and are using this guise of obsession with Israel and under the guise of anti-Semitism to say only the Jewish state can exist. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu.
Don't you notice he hasn't acknowledged that there's Palestinians? So he is a scumbag, like all the Zionists. All this shit with the guitar behind it. I'm a musician. I'm about love. He has not acknowledged the Palestinian deaths and suffering. He is only worried about people who wants to abolish Israel. Israel has nuclear weapons. Who's going to abolish Israel? Stop with this fucking bullshit, man. Stop, please. Please, stop. Stop with this victimhood. He has not acknowledged that there are Palestinians being killed for their homes. So this is the problem. This is a Zionist scumbag.
Will be voted out at some point. That's not the same thing in much of the world that surrounds Israel. These people have indefinite terms of leadership. So that's what Israel's up against. So I just think it's always looked at as the one that has the power. But Israel's the size of New Jersey. Literally a little smaller than New Jersey.
Land.
There's only 15 million Jews around the world.
Well, I don't care.
You know, there's billions and billions of other populations. So we're such a small percentage.
So
and in terms
15,
of
so
who's the underdog looking at that situation, I think if you
so
just zoom out a little
we're
bit.
just 15 million people, so we're allowed to steal other people's land, you know? We get to steal the land. So it's only a little bit of us. We got a lot of power for 15 million people, my friend. So much power.
And see all this territory and all these regimes that want nothing more than to just knock Israel off the map.
It's a lie. Israel has a peace treaty with almost all those countries surrounding it. This idea and this talking point of Israel surrounded by its enemy is a lie. It has a treaty with Jordan, border country, treaty with Egypt, 100 million people, treaty with the UAE, treaty with almost all the Arab countries have some treaties with it, except Lebanon, who's like about, 4 million people? Come on, man. Stop talking. These talking points he's using, he's a pure Zionist.
It gives a little bit of perspective to it.
Yeah,
So,
I have no allegiance to Israel. I don't know. I'm just an American, and I would like more divorce in terms of our politics from Israel. Don't wish them any harm. Hope that they solve all the issues that are in the region. But quite literally, I have no attachment to the place, and I think it's weird that people are kind of trying to, you would, of course, because you've been there, you're Jewish, you've got heritage there. It's just weird when people are trying to make me feel that their ancestral or their heritage is mine. It's just not, you know. If you want to go down with me to St. Thomas, and then I'll be like, hey, listen, look at this great island, these Caribbean accents, there's great jerk chicken, like, come on. And it's doper. It's better. If we want to go tit for tat, food's better.
But if St. Thomas got attacked and people were taken hostage, and I went time and time again criticizing the response that St. Thomas made and saying, hey, it's ridiculous, you know, and I said we shouldn't support them, we shouldn't give them any money, they should just do their own thing.
I would be understanding, because I would say, listen, and this is St. Thomas with its own country.
You know, with this hostages, Israel has killed about 42 hostages with their bombings. Don't you know they never mentioned that? We love our hostages, but when we kill them, it's okay. I had another show I want to show you, but I don't have time, man. The whole idea is right now it's all about, you know, they're sniffing each other's asses right now. There's really nothing to talk about with that. They already finished. His whole purpose is successful, I guess. If he got her to not to talk about the Palestinian deaths, she hasn't mentioned them either. So he's very successful in coming on the show, talking to her, and trying, you know, to keep her not from talking too much about Israel. He succeeded, didn't you? You saw that. And at the end, she was smiling and laughing like a little idiot that she is. We're going to see her next show what it is, because she was going hard on these more. Let's see if I have some videos. Let me see what this is. Let me see.
Look at a guy like Senator Schumer. I've always known him. I've known him a long time. I come from New york. I knew.
Yeah, I come from New York. Okay. Let me tell you something. No, it's too much, right? Let me give him the room. Let me give him. All right. This guy is garbage. You understand? He's not worth it. He's not your leader. He doesn't have your interest. I'm talking to my white brothers and sisters. Like Joe Biden is a senile. Listen to this, the way he talks about Palestinians, as if it's a slur. Listen to him. Shows you he's a transactional garbage.
Schumer. He's become a Palestinian. He's a Palestinian now. Congratulations. He was very loyal to Israel and to Jewish people. He's Jewish, but he's become a Palestinian because they have a couple of
What does that
votes or
mean?
something. Nobody's quite figured it out.
There's only one thing. You know, I always get the wrong shit on that. Anyway, what I want to say is I want to keep his picture there. You know how some at the right say that Soros is the arch enemy of the right, that he's always planning his money's. You have the same. You have the Edison family from Las Vegas. So the husband has died. He gave $100 million in the 2020 or 2016. He gave $100 million to Trump to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital. Now, Miriam Edelson, who lives in Israel, has offered Trump $100 million donation for him to recognize the West Bank as Israeli territory. Now, he has no right to do that, but he's probably going to, if he becomes president, he's probably going to do that. What I'm trying to say is we cannot complain about George Soros, and not complain about Miriam Edelson, who owns the Dallas Maverick. She's a Zionist piece of garbage. She has offered Donald Trump $100 million so he could recognize the West Bank as Israeli territory. So everybody's for sale. No one is looking out for America. Not the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party. Let me get them out of here. because I'm about to say good night, okay? So what I'm saying here is that
for example,
this guy's an idiot. Get him out of here. He's civil war. We're gonna use weapons, scaring people away. So let me close this. Like I said, Donald Trump is owned by the Edison family. It's a Jewish family that owns the Las Vegas Sand and owns the Dallas Mavericks. He's worth billions of dollars. Her husband just died, who gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Trump in the last 2 elections. In return, and for favors for Israel. So if George Soros, wow. So if George Soros is the pimp of the Democratic Party, then the Adelson family are the pimps of the Republican Party. America needs real leadership. It doesn't need a demented president like Joe Biden or a transactional scumbag from New York. He's from New York. I'm from New York. We know each other very well. As president, Donald Trump was president for 4 years. He never did anything for the people who voted him in. He passed one bill. It was I think a $2 trillion tax cut for the top 10% of rich American. What they did was a redistribution of wealth. We're taking wealth from the bottom and giving it to the top. That's what tax cuts for the wealthy is. You understand what it is? They disturbed the wealth. They took it from you, me, and everybody else who were poor, and gave it right to the rich. And he never offered anything. He never passed any health bills, any insurance. I gotta go, guys. Anyway, let me go, man. I think these getting sick have been sitting in the same position for 2 hours. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that to my white brothers and sisters, Donald Trump is not serving your purpose. He's not the right person to lead this country. He is transactional. He could be bought for money at any price. He's for sale. The Democratic Party and Joe Biden is betrayed America by hiding the fact that the man is suffering from dementia for the last year or two and lying to us that he's in charge of the country. That's treasonous. They should be held responsible legally for lying to the American public. Anyway, let me put it this way. Took a 10 days break. I didn't feel like, you know why I get upset? Because I don't get no comments on my live stream. I get 700, 800 views. Nobody comments. Write something, man. Write something. Even curse me out. I don't know, man. It is what it is. Anyway, the money's still the same, so it doesn't really matter. You understand? All right, let me say goodbye. God bless you all. God bless the United States. Congratulations to the European, to the British, right, and the French. Oh, I don't know if it's congratulations. I'd rather have the right wing come to power because I want to see what they're gonna do. If they're successful, instead of just fucking talking bullshit all day. Oh, if I was in power, I'll do this. You're not gonna do nothing. You're gonna do the same thing the liberals gonna do. All right, see you next time.